What's going on, guys? Aaron from Top Tier Gaming here, and today I sort of want to do like a meta breakdown of like the last couple of weeks. Sort of in the past 2 weeks we had a weekend of a lot of regionals, and we had the YCS, the 250th YCS a couple weeks back. I'm not going to focus too much on that because it's kind of in the past now, like it's 2 weeks ago at this point, so yeah, I don't want to spend too much time focusing on the YCS, but sort of where the YCS has led us to now and where we are in the current meta. Now, we don't have actually any big events for this current meta. Like, we don't have another YCS before, I believe, Cyberstrike Access, Cyberstorm Access comes out, one of those names. So this current meta, as far as big events, is actually kind of over. However, a lot of people still have regionals this weekend and I believe next weekend. So people still have smaller tournaments where they need to know what's going on in the meta and sort of prepare, because there have been a couple of pretty big developments in the last couple of weeks, and I'm just going to talk about those briefly. Before I hop into it, I do want to let you guys know Discord link down below, along with all of our other social media links. Also, I'm trying to hit 14,000 subscribers. We are super close. I think we're just getting close to 14,000, like 40 subs away. And yeah, so if you do enjoy this Yu-Gi-Oh content and you like what you see here, feel free to like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's hop into talking about like the meta, because I have the tendency to make these videos last way longer than they really need to, like 20 or 30 minutes. I'm gonna try to keep it around like 15 or under, just for, you know, some coherent discussion. Before we hop into actually discussing the most recent trends, I do want to briefly talk about the 250th and my last tier list where I ranked what decks would be good at the event, because it's always fun to go over these, sort of like retrospect on what I thought would do well and then what actually did. Very briefly, Cash and Sprite I put at the top, which turned out to be pretty spot on. I mean, Cash won 2 events, Sprite won the other. Then I had Labyrinth and Mathmech. I think this was a little off. I still would put Mathmech here if I were to redo the tier list, even though they didn't do that amazing. But Labyrinth and Naturia Runic 100% should have been swapped, I think. Like, I didn't even have enough faith in Naturia Runic, or I had faith in it, and that's why I put it pretty high on the tier list. But I think I had too much in Labyrinth and not enough in Naturia Runic, so yeah, those could have been swapped. Plunder sort of failed me. It didn't do as good as I thought it would. I still think the deck's very strong, but yeah. Branded did about what I expected, not that great. Sword Soul did okay. I know he got a top at Los Angeles specifically. And honestly, Rika overperformed. There was a tier limit. Sprite definitely overperformed. Overall, I would say most of these decks are somewhat accurate. Obviously, I don't remember Scareclaw doing super well. I don't remember, maybe there was a hero deck. But yeah, these were maybe 1 or 2s, and then did anything here particularly do well? I don't think so, unless I'm missing something. I don't have like all of the topping decks memorized. By the way, I actually just do not like that YouTube has this bar here if it's paused. But yeah, overall, actually, Springans actually did better than I thought it would. So overall, I think this list was okay. Definitely messed up on Naturia Runic, I think was the biggest mistake. Otherwise, I'd probably keep most of this list the same. And yeah, so that's it for sort of recapping the 250th and sort of our tier list prediction on it. Now I want to talk about some developments, because definitely the meta has trended in certain ways that weren't exactly there before. So Kashtira, I think, is the biggest one. Kashtira obviously won 2 events, being 2 of the 250th YCSs, and it continues to do super well at regionals. Which is what we're really here for, people like thinking about their future regional events, or anyone just playing in the current format still and aren't playing like Cyberstrike Access format already. If it's Cyberstorm Access and I'm saying it wrong, it's gonna feel really bad. Anyway, talking about Kashtira, the biggest development, I think, is really sort of the triangle of cards that beat this. So let's put out some Kashtira cards here. And sort of we have like Nibiru, and then we have Kaijus, and then we have like Droll and Lockbird's a big one. There's a lot of cards that beat Kashtira. Now, a big thing that sort of developed is Kashtira is weird because you don't really know which version of Kashtira your opponent's playing, and really not even which version sometimes, but rather what they're doing in their own version. The most frustrating thing about Kashtira for me is the fact that the same build can go for like 3 different lines almost. So you have Arise Heart Pass, which is where it was trending up to the YCS, and then more people started to like disrespect Nibiru and sort of just go for the zone lock, going for the very powerful high ceiling play the deck has. And that version, it's also hard to prepare for both of those. And then, so I heard more about this one. I haven't personally played against it, but I heard people going for double Arise Heart, which like plays into Nib, but plays around Gameciel. Now, I don't know how popular that play actually is, because it feels like if you're going for that, why not just go for the Zone Lock? I don't know if there's a different number of engine pieces you need to see. I haven't played much Kashtira myself, but yeah, that's something to note, is that there is sort of a triangle with these cards, in which whether they're going to be good against the version you're playing or not is really hard to sort of predict. I do think Nib is still solid, and the fact that there's always like 30 to 40% of players at least playing Nib like this entire format, I think Nib is really weird because it's normally like a cyclical card that either no one's playing it, so then it suddenly becomes good because no one's playing around it, and vice versa, where everyone's playing it, so everyone's playing around it and then the card's not good. But this format, in like the last 5 or 6 weeks, it feels like there's always been a percentage of people on Nibiru, so you almost always have had to respect it even when it feels out of the format. It's just something I've kind of noticed. One thing to mention about Kashtira is I really feel like Ibli might see a small surge. This is something I want to briefly mention, because I'm not stating this like for you to take it as fact. I feel like every time this card seems good, Kashtira players still aren't playing it. But I feel like this card has been disrespected for so long at this point. Like the last 5 weeks, we've seen very little Ibli Kashtira, and because of that, we've seen very little people playing around it, even like Linguribo's leaving extra decks entirely, of course. You know, when this format started, Linguribo was super popular. We've definitely seen its decline. A card like this could sneak up at any moment, which is something I want to like keep in the back of my mind. But yeah, so Droll is also kind of good versus them. It depends on how they open. It could be like just okay and stop like a Fenrir Search, or sometimes they start with Prosperity, grab Terraforming, and this card destroys them. So Droll and Lock is something interesting as well. Another thing I really want to talk about is definitely the rise of Gamma. I feel like Gamma at the beginning of this format was like almost nowhere. I mean, it was definitely in some side decks, don't get me wrong, but Gamma its trend upward has been so quick, I think, and it's definitely a card to keep in the back of your mind talking about the current meta. Not only just is it a really powerful card that essentially, I think what happened is Sprite became more popular, and this card is obviously very good versus Sprite, but also Sprite started to play it themselves, and some run Emergency Teleport to Special Gamma, and because of that, not only do you have people playing it against Sprite, but Sprite themselves are playing it, so of course the play rate of this card is going to rise. I think this is definitely a card that's been trending upwards in the meta, even if it's just to stop cards like Droll and Lockbird that have been getting secretly more powerful. Not even secretly, I guess for the last 3 weeks, Droll's been on everyone's radar to some extent. But yeah, Gamma is something definitely to look out for. Now, talking about the regional I just went to the Fort Worth regional this past weekend. There were 500 players. I made a video. I took Trap Tricks, if you want to check that out on the channel, and it was a very interesting regional. I don't know if it's because there's no YCSs for the rest of this format, but the most represented deck in the room, and I have no stats for this, but just what it felt like, was actually like Trap Tricks. I swear there were like 50 plus Trap Tricks around the room. I was just seeing so many of them, and I asked like my friends and people they were playing, and I said like, hey, what'd you play against today? Almost all of them said they played against a Trap Tricks. I had a friend who played Trap Tricks besides me. Actually, there were 3 of us, and he had 2 mirror matches, so I was like, there are so many Trap Tricks in the room. So I think it's really funny. Like, this deck has some inherent problems, but it definitely, especially since I guess there are no big events at the regional level, because it's also a very budget friendly deck, you might see quite a few of these. And this Trap Tricks actually won the Tuscaloosa regional this past weekend, so Trap Tricks might be trending upwards. Again, I don't have the stats to like look at it. The spreadsheet that everyone usually goes to hasn't been updated in a while, so I don't actually have the raw data myself, but just empirically and knowing that it also won Tuscaloosa, Trap Tricks seems to be rising in play, even if it's just because it's a budget deck they can take to a regional, or people want to have fun with the rest of the format. So Trap Tricks might be something to look out for. That's not to say it's doing that well overall though, because like I said, I think there were so many at Fort Worth, maybe even more than 50. Again, I don't have the raw data, but the conversion rate was not that great. I don't think we had a Trap Tricks in the top 8 at Fort Worth. Maybe we had one. I didn't top the event, and I don't know if a Trap Tricks topped, but it doesn't have that amazing of a conversion rate. Now, I did see 2 Trap Tricks at the top tables round 9, but they both lost, so You know, there could have been easily 2 Trap Tricks in top 8, but there were not, I don't believe. So yeah, talking about other things in the meta, sort of like what are the best decks right now, I think it's still Sprite and Naturia Runic and Kashtira. I think that much is notable. I think Naturia Runic has definitely proven itself to be one of the best decks this format. Obviously, a lot of people were on this deck for the YCS, and its play has continuously like trended up, so definitely preparing for this, and sort of Runic in general. Like, Fountain is of course such a crazy card, and then of course there was the Runic Kashtira deck. Runic is getting splashed in a lot, so maybe if you're going to a regional, consider Cosmic Cyclone 100% to be in your side deck, because yeah, I mean, Cosmic, it hits, you know, almost everything to an extent. Like, it's pretty good versus Trap Tricks we talked about, or Labyrinth if you play, like, the Trap decks. Obviously, there's a bunch of Runic variants, though, that you can definitely side Cosmic for as well. And not only that, it's actually pretty good going first against Cash, I find. You don't always want to side it. This is, like, depending on your siding patterns and what you're siding, or how many go first cards you actually side in. I actually don't mind Cosmic when I'm going first against Cash, because it hits Birth, it hits the field spell, so that's usually like pretty okay. It's not amazing, I'm not saying, hey, definitely 100% side in Cosmic against Cash, but it's not terrible. Honestly, like, the way this format's been trending, it does feel like a lot of decks are still good, and a lot of things since... Like, let's talk about Branded for a second, I guess, as well. Talking about, we'll put a Luber on the screen. Talking about Branded, since Branded has actually been getting less representation almost every event. You know, like, on my tier list, I didn't say it would do that well. It didn't see too much success at any of the YCSs. Some here or there. But honestly, because of that, people are going to start preparing for it less. And, you know, this format is the story of, like, cyclical cards, right? So the Bystials were something that went up for a while and then went back down a little bit. Things like Bell, because we were preparing for Branded. Now, I don't think any of this actually has anything to do with Ash Blossom specifically. The main anti-branded card, I think everyone's playing that almost regardless. You know, some people might be siding it, some people might not main it at all, especially decks like Dark World, of course, aren't going to play a card like Ash Blossom. But yeah, Branded, you know, it could see a small surge, especially at the regional scene. I feel like at regionals, Branded is always more played than what we would have seen at the YCS. I just feel like Branded does well at regionals overall, as far as play rate, for sure. And it's something I think we should prepare for a little as well. That being said, that's sort of all of the cards I guess I wanted to talk about for like deck specific stuff. Talking about side deck cards really briefly, I think Kurikara has seen a very large increase in play rate. This card's insane. It obviously did really well at the YCS weekend, and I think it did really well this past regional weekend. This card is really, really strong. I mean, this card's just incredibly solid. Evenly Matched still seems to be super popular as well, so these are cards to prepare for, or side deck yourself, or even main deck. Again, Droll has been good. Gamma has been good. These are definitely cards that I have seen trending upwards a bit. There's definitely more than this though, so I'm not going to be able to list everything in this video, so if you have any cards that are on your radar that I didn't list, feel free to leave those down below. I'll be sure to read them, and then everyone else can go and read them as well. You know, we can have a little bit of a discussion in the comments of a discussion video. But yeah, these are definitely some cards that are on my hot list as far as what I'm looking at and preparing for. Obviously, Kaijus are solid, Nibiru's solid, there's so many solid cards. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for me and this video. I just wanted to sort of talk about the meta and where we're at in it. Again, there are no like super big events like a YCS to look forward to, so it's just a regional scene where you can expect more decks that are sort of low budget like Trap Tricks or Branded to an extent. Right, I don't think anything's expensive in Branded anymore after Guardian Chimera. Unless I'm just missing something, maybe Gimmick Puppet is still expensive. But yeah, and then I wanted to talk about Ibly briefly like I did earlier, because that card could be insane. Who knows what Ibly is going to sort of trend after this. I feel like she's still good, but again, this format is almost over, and then we have Cyberstorm Access to think about in the future. But with all that being said, that is going to be it for me in this discussion video. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think of this current meta, and like, what do you think the best decks are, or cards you think are really good right now? I'll be sure to read those. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. This has been Aaron from Top Tier Gaming. Bye, YouTube.